Step into the radiant world of Izzy Ivy, a visionary artist, creator of the most stunning oracle card decks, and spiritual alchemist. In this episode of Ask the Oracle with Suzy Cherub, Izzy takes us on an astonishing journey through her creative evolution from discovering her passion for painting during her Saturn return to infusing her art with high frequency energy that inspires healing and awakening. With a career spanning over a decade, Izzy has brought to life 5 oracle decks, including the best-selling Beyond Lemuria and her last masterpiece, the Light Code Apothecary. Hopefully I've said that right. She shares how her spiritual experiences, including powerful downloads and a deep fascination with the non-physical, have shaped her artistic process and her mission to elevate consciousness through her creative work. Join us as Izzy reveals the magic behind her luminous paintings, her journey as a Reiki Master. I'm a Reiki Master too, so we're going to have a lot in common, and the transformative power of intentional creativity. This episode is a vibrant exploration of the intersection of art, spirituality, and healing. One that will leave you inspired to connect with your creative spark and inner wisdom. Hi, Izzy.
Hi, Suzy. It's really beautiful to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome, my love. I'm so excited to dive deep. I absolutely adore your art and your insights and your wisdom. And I feel a really kind of beautiful resonance with your work. So let's delve into these questions. Let's get started. There's some really juicy questions here that I can't wait to hear your beautiful answers. So, how did your Saturn return spark such a powerful shift in your creative journey, my love?
Yeah, so that was the point where I think my life did the 180-degree turn. Um, I was previously I've always been creative ever since I was a kid. Um, and I was doing actually focused on clothing design for goddesses and fairies and priestess wear. That was I sort of had a clothing design business, and I was
Oh, I
doing a lot of
love that.
yeah.
I'm a fairy queen at heart. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. There's a fairy part of me in there. And I was doing fire dancing, and I was doing a lot of Reiki and energy work, and I was doing lots of different things, I think. And I knew that I was supposed to be doing something with my hands, though. I didn't entirely know what that was. But yeah, it wasn't actually until somebody literally handed me oil paints and said, I think you should try these. And it was as if, yeah, my life changed overnight. But curiously, both my parents are actually artists.
Oh,
And
are they?
because of that, I didn't want to be a painter. My dad was commercial, and my mom was an art teacher, teaching more like realism and yeah, very, very different kind of art that I do. So it was, I think it's been in my blood, but at the same time, I just wanted to try everything else. And in some ways, I'm glad I did, because I've been in just total devotion to the painting and now writing journey since having that shift in my timeline. Yeah.
Often those creative pathways run through an ancestral lineage, I've noticed. So I love that both your parents are also artists, very different, of course. And I love that you explored lots of different creative pathways before doing your art, because I do feel, I don't know, do you feel that it kind of deepens the work that you do because you've got that I know that you're, an explorer, a traveler as well, and you're very creative. So do you feel like it deepens your work when you've got that life experience?
Yeah, I think, hang on, in terms of like my family, like the blood lineage aspect. Yeah, I think it's funny because when I was younger, I guess the little rebel in me was just like, my mom would be like, hey, let me show you how to paint this thing, or let me help you with this. And I was like, no, I can do it myself. I don't. It was funny. But in later years, I'm like, I've really appreciated her little tips and tricks. And she lives in England and I'm on the other side of the world, so we don't get to see each other that often, but we do get to paint together sometimes when we do meet up, and that's really special. But yeah, I think actually it was somebody that kind of brought this into my awareness recently, because I was thinking that I didn't really feel like having, that as a child impacted me so much, but I realized that it's really the way that I think I was taught to see. I do remember my mom being like, look at those clouds.
Oh,
What color are
yeah,
those clouds? And I'd be like, gray. And she'd be like, no, look again. And there's like pink and blue and orange and all these different things. So I think it's more about having that artist's eye in some ways. So yeah. I...
really beautiful. I love that.
Mhm.
So your oracle decks are a fusion of art and spiritual wisdom. And I know that, just by looking at your art, I know how intuitive you are. Can you
Mhm.
share the process of how these two worlds, the art and the spiritual world, come together in your stunning creations?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was interesting actually some years back when I did my first exhibition, my first solo exhibition, and somebody asked me, why did you only just start painting? And I said, well, because now I really have something that I feel passionate about communicating. I do really think that art for the sake of art is a very healthy thing to do. But for me personally, I felt like there was another piece of the jigsaw puzzle. Like there was two aspects to it. And actually, it was probably a few years before I started painting. I started getting these very powerful downloads, and yeah, very blissful washes of energy. Often there would be images and information, and that's where my connection with Lemuria started actually. But yeah, I guess it was around a similar timing when, I was exploring new mediums, such as oil paints. And then simultaneously, I realized that the two, like the Reiki and the energy work and the painting, were a really beautiful combination. I'm synesthetic, and sometimes it's been frustrating in my earlier life when I would want to share like very intricate concepts, and I would kind of get tangled up in my words because there was just so much multi-dimensional information, or there was just so many colors and shapes and things going on in my head, that it would be quite challenging. But when I got into energy work, I realized it was kind of the perfect narrative to be journeying with somebody in a session. And then when I got into painting and I allowed spirit to dance me in the way that I've uh, built that relationship with, I realized that actually those like an aspect that I thought was like not so great was actually like a key in the lock, like a gift. So it was really great to be able to, yeah, as I say, share these downloads and this multidimensional information in a way that was kind of beyond the mind. It could just like download directly to the canvas without me trying to put it in some kind of linear format. And somehow people got it. They like really understood what I was trying to say. So, and it had a really positive effect. So I kept doing it. And the more I did it, the more I feel like I received the soul assignments. So yeah, it's kind of journeyed out from there. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me in terms of inspiration, especially when I was starting, was to capture light and magic on canvas. Like, I guess, yeah, I was like, it's one thing to paint real life, and that's great. But I wanted to paint the unseen. I wanted to paint these colors and energies that I was experiencing when I was doing these energy sessions with people, or when, I was experiencing these downloads, or like connected to memories of Lemuria and other timelines. And that was what felt really exciting to me. So I really honed my skill set to be, figuring out, squinting at sparkles and like figuring out how to create these like rainbow glazes where it's, anchoring that energy. Yeah.
Uh, I just find your art very multifaceted, and I love the magic of light and color.
Mm.
um, and to be downloading those, insights and the wisdom, and even connecting to Lemuria. Like it's just so beautiful, so illuminating. I just love it, Izzy. So gorgeous. I love the way you explained it. So amazing. I mean, you can be an artist where, you can do very correct art. And then,
Mm.
I find your art is so unique and so like beautiful. And it's almost like you can see the light fractals kind of within your art, which is sensational as well. So, as an intuitive and as a Reiki master teacher myself, it's kind of like, to me, yeah, it has that, uh, as I said, that beautiful multi-dimensional kind of feel to it, which is really beautiful.
That's great to
So,
hear.
yeah, yeah. So how do you channel the energy and intention into your paintings to uplift and inspire healing for those who encounter them? I know that you've kind of described some of that, but can you dive a bit deeper into that for us?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think one of the key aspects is intention. So when I set up um, my painting space, I feel like my whole house is ode to inspiration and a little creative temple. But I do feel like, and I'm sort of sharing this for those that are also inspired to do this kind of thing, is to, yeah, to have your easel as a sacred space. I often say my easel is my altar.
Oh
So
my
it's
goodness, I love that so much. I love
yeah.
sacred space. I love consciously creating a sacred space in a really pragmatic way as well. You're doing your art. So, yes.
Mhm.
Sorry, I got a bit excited then.
No, I love that. We're definitely on the same frequency.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, there's a few different factors. People often ask, where do your ideas come from? And or do you have like a fully like actualized concept of what you're going to paint? And I always say it's like 50-50. And I love to dance, like I love to do like ecstatic dance and love to walk in nature and meditate and listen to, high frequency music. And I often find that in those spaces, that's when these uh yeah, when these ideas come through, like sometimes they'll come through as an actual download. More recently, I've been visiting sacred sites and receiving information from like places. But really, it's like I could just be walking down the street one day, and then it's like, boop, there's my concept for the painting. But I find that actually leaving and it's like half of the idea comes through, but then the actual process of being in front of the canvas, going into that deep flow state. I mean, honestly, for me, I feel like I go incredibly deep. And that sort of is where the rest of the information comes through. It really does feel like a channeling process, just because when I come out the other side, I'm very like, my hands are buzzing, and sometimes I'm like ultra sensitive, so I have to kind of structure my day so that I don't have to go out into town after doing a big session. And like there's also a process of uh you know uh energetic awareness around all of it. But yeah, I do find just having that allowance of receptivity and allowing the painting to kind of almost talk to me. Sometimes there'll be moments where I'm sat in front of it and it will just tell me what it wants to be. And I'm kind of glad that I don't have it too constricted in terms of the concept, so that more magic can come through and it kind of be imbued with every paint stroke. So yeah, it's a very sacred place to be.
Speaking of sacred places, you're in one of my most favorite places on the planet.
Mm.
Um, can you tell the listeners where you are
Mm.
and how you find how does that impact your art, do you think, and your insights living where you are? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm in Bali, I'm in Ubud, and I find it an incredibly inspiring place to be. For those that have been here before, you may be aware that everywhere you look, especially in Ubud, there's little bits of magic everywhere. There's lots of art everywhere. There's sculptures and shrines and temples and just intentional energy set up in a visual form that is just, yeah, you can't help but be inspired. I also find it just really beautiful that yeah, the beautiful souls that are here are doing their intentional ceremonies three
Oh, I
times a day.
love
Like they're
that.
communing with the
Oh,
beyond.
the
Like,
Balinese, the way they have that self-devotion and that beautiful spiritual practice, like they've got their, their altars in their homes, in their businesses. They put those beautiful, beautiful kind of flower offerings together. It's just you can almost feel it in the air, can't you? It's like it's fragrant. It's beautiful. Yeah.
absolutely. And it feels like there's
Yeah.
a lot of life force here too with the nature. And I don't really know what it is, but there's also this very powerful creative energy here too. As I said before, I was a painter. I used to do clothing design, and there was some periods of time when I was here doing that. And I always remember just feeling like I could just stay up all night for a whole week almost, just in this creative vortex. So I have to say, I think, yeah, there's definitely some magic here, and it's being a bit like being out of time and space. Like you kind of step into another dimension when you're here. So yeah,
Even their
very,
spirit,
very
even their
grateful.
spirituality is interesting too, because it's that fusion of, that fusion of Hinduism, Buddhism, nature spirits. I mean, one of my favorite goddesses is Dewi Sri, the rice goddess of Java and Bali. So I totally get where you are and how sacred and creative it is. And I know it's also the art capital of Bali as well, because you've got all those villages that do all that beautiful artwork and stuff. And yay, I love that. That's so
Mhm.
good. So, my
Yeah.
love, what has been the most profound or unexpected spiritual download you've received, and how did it kind of shape your work?
Yeah, it's a slightly tough question because there are two that were particularly poignant. I'm trying to decide which one is
Oh, tell us
the
both.
one. Both of them are slightly longer stories, but I'll see if I can like, yeah. So the first one was my first connection with Lemuria, and that was actually through a I guess it was like a past life regression, but it was with my teacher who I used to do weekly meditations with. And for some reason, it was just the two of us on that day. And she said, let's try something different. And just even before I was going into that space, I started feeling my body being like elongated and transparent with this kind of like shimmering glow. And I fully felt myself like this otherworldly being. And then I had an experience of a lifetime there, which did change my life essentially. Like there was, I won't go into the details because it will probably take me a while to explain it. But there was the notion of no scarcity. Like you could live in like a mud hut amongst the ferns in the rainforest, but you could also manifest anything at will and live in a crystalline temple in the sky. So it was like, if you can manifest anything at
Oh,
will,
yes, please. That'd be
what it truly felt like to
yeah.
not be in a scarcity space. So that was really transformational. But I think the thing that was interesting was that I'd never actually heard of Lemuria before. I was living in Australia, and I was just very intrigued by everything that I saw. So of course I wanted to research it, and I started to realize it was lining up with some things that were connected with that. And then as I started to talk about it or paint about it, I guess, later on actually is when I started to paint about it, and people recognized it and they were like, oh, it's Lemuria, or that's a Lemurian being. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So that was powerful. And I've had quite a few, more from there. But then the other one was actually with the birth of Unveiling the Golden Age. So that deck was like, honestly, like when people ask me about it and when I even look at it, I'm just like, wow, I wrote that. Like, I really feel like it was just so fully channeled, like something else stepped in. And it was even funny when the name came through. I was like,
I love
Unveiling
the
the
name.
Golden Age. I'm like, am I really cannot, who's to say that I can share that kind of information? They were like, don't worry, we got you. And that was a connection with the golden ones from the Great Central Sun. So, you know, like some of this can sound, I mean, I'm sure your listeners are quite used to hearing about these otherworldly places and
my
spaces.
audience will be really amazed and very in alignment with what you say. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I assumed so, but you know, but that experience was very far out because, you know, I'd been painting for hours. I knew that I needed to leave the house and do something. And I was trying to actually ground myself. But I was sat there almost sitting in a circle of my paintings. It just so happened that I had just I don't know, maybe 12 paintings around me. And I just kind of sat in the frequency of them after doing a meditation that was, I thought might actually ground me, but it seemed to have the opposite effect. Anyway, as I went upstairs, I started feeling very, very like kind of disorientated, but like very, very expanded. I was like, what is going on? And I literally had the word in my head, lie down, go to bed, go into your bed, which I did. And then I had the most incredible download I've ever had in my life. Like the sharing about Lemuria was just kind of like reminding me of another timeline and giving me a life shift. Whereas this was like glimpsing the universe in all of the macro, micro, absolutely incredible experience. But I was actually, so yeah.
I love that expansive energy. Like the way you described that, I literally got this effervescent goosebumps, tingles. Yeah, that kind of beautiful golden solar. I don't know. There's just something so radiant about that. And yeah, it was almost like I could kind of like go on that journey with you. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, I'm glad I can
Mm.
emanate it because it's too a little challenging to put into words. But one thing I did ask, well, curiously, these golden beings asked me if I would work with them on a project. And I said, first of all, because I have discernment, I said, show me unconditional love. You know, that's my kind of gauge for, you know,
Yes.
discernment with working with other dimensional beings. And they did. And it was extremely beautiful, very, very, very profound. And then I asked if I could experience it 3 times in physical reality. And sure enough, I did. And on the final one, I said yes. And then that started the journey of the creation of the paintings and then the writing of the book that goes with it. But it's more than it, and I didn't even expect it to be a tarot deck. I actually was creating it because I wanted to be able to create a deck that could be worked with in community and family. And it was a guided journey facilitation tool with like portals and different beings that you meet and you know,
Oh, I see what
all
you
of that
mean.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then it also became like a tool for doing grid work on the planet. And then finally it was like, oh my gosh, and it completely aligns with the tarot. So I really felt like something was working with me, like a very kind of optimistic or more empowering version of the tarot in some ways. So
I love how
um,
deep your work is. That's actually a really good segue for the next question, which is, Izzy, can you describe the luminous techniques you teach your students to bring glow and sparkle to their artwork? So you're an art teacher as well, yeah?
that's correct. Yeah.
And a
I had a
spiritual teacher, I would imagine.
The two are very infused. I don't think I could really do one without the other because the painting and the spirituality is so interconnected in my own life that to teach the two are very much interrelated. But yeah, I had a lot of people asking me about teaching, and for a little while I was like, oh, you know, and then similarly, I get downloads for practical things too. And I had a download for my first class, which is called Anchoring Light, and more recently another class, which is the it's kind of like the crystalline light codes. So
Beautiful.
yeah, I mean, I basically teach a technique which is kind of all of the tools and tips that I've accumulated and worked on over the years, in a way that pretty much anyone can do. If someone has already created a paint, yeah, if someone is already a painter, then those tools are also really helpful. And if someone's completely new, the way that it's guided, like step by step and layer by layer, really anybody can do it. But yeah, I guess the main thing that I do is glazes, like fine layers of color over the top of sort of like white information. And I mean, I teach like stars and sparkles and gems and rays and all of those kinds of things
I
more
love
recently,
that.
like crystals and
I love it.
how to paint gold. And now there's more of an infusion of light language and that kind of thing. But I think honestly the biggest thing that I feel like inspired to share is that whole notion of getting out of one's own way, because I really
Oh,
feel like
yeah.
my life changed or my abilities
That's a
as an
potent
artist.
message right there. Stop the overthinking, yeah, just, I think it becomes a more intuitive process then, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. And I think that's one of the beauties of sharing some of these classes, is I do love those moments where people are like, oh, you mean I've got to do this on myself? And like, or everything's set up, the container and everything, but there's this one section where it's like, and now this is the opportunity for your spirit to dance you. And we do a deep dive meditation to start with to get into that sort of space. And then they're always so blown away with what actually comes through. But yeah, similarly, like especially if one has these very complex downloads and there's so much information to them, if we really try and use our like mental intellect, or we're kind of hitting a brick wall. But
Yeah.
when we kind of allow ourselves to go into this deeper space, and this receptivity and this kind of dance, like call it like dancing with the divine, um, it allows for maybe the A to B might be a different process, but something that always blows me away is at the end, I can say for myself and also my students, like whatever that intention with it was at the beginning, or whether it was like something I was working with as like a question or whatever, it sort of like answered or consolidates or encapsulates the energy of that initial experience, even if it's maybe I just say more energetic. But yeah, that absolutely blew me away. So I think that's one of the things that I love to teach, as well
It's
as all the
almost like it's almost like an entire embodiment experience, isn't it? The way you describe that.
yeah,
Like you
it's
almost embody it. And I love that you mentioned the anchoring too, like anchoring the light, anchoring it
mm,
into the sacred now, like bringing it into I don't know, something really incredibly magical about that. I love that.
I
So
feel
you're,
like this
yeah.
notion of realm bridging.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
Mm.
with this fascination for the non-physical, how do you see the connection between like creativity and spiritual awakening? Big
Mm,
question, right? No
yeah.
light and fluffy with me.
No, I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think as one steps more deeply onto their creative path, one often experiences more of an undulating journey of all the flavors of life and all of the lessons and the learnings and the reflections and the possibilities for healing and shining light in the corners that we didn't realize we have. Like there's a whole journey that happens, obviously. I'm sure many of your audience will be familiar with. So I think having a kind of almost like a creative ally to align that process with can really go a long way. So, whether it's just a sense of expression, whether it's I mean, there's so many different forms of creativity, it could be writing or poetry, or it could be the expressiveness of painting or singing, whatever it is, I think
Or ecstatic
kind of
dancing. I love that you do that. I love dancing too.
Yeah, it's all so interconnected.
Yes.
But I think there's the ability to release energy. There's the ability to anchor some of these like downloads that are happening at the same time in a way that maybe later on you or others can look back over and be reminded back to that frequency. I think, you know, I do a lot of traveling, and I often feel like I shared earlier about my easel being the altar, but it's also my home, you know, like sometimes when
Oh,
I'm on the
really? I
road
love
and life
that.
is doing whatever it's doing, I'm just like,
Yes.
this is my like anchor point or my
Like
like
your
ground
happy
place.
place or your power place or your,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
yes, the anchor to that beautiful, creative, intuitive, beautiful work that you do. Yeah. So it
Absolutely.
wouldn't
But I
matter where you were, right? As long as you had your easel with you.
pretty much. Yeah. But I think there's another piece on that as well is just that in terms of when people are on that creative path, sorry, on that spiritual path, there is so much beautiful information that they're kind of connecting with because one's frequency is expanding. So I feel like when we expand our frequency, we're also getting to meet information that's really present in the energy field. And if we're talking about, you know, like the new earth or the transformation of the planet, like I do feel like there is yeah, there's other energetic energies, benevolent beings and just frequencies that are excited to connect. And you know, like sometimes these ideas come through that are in conversation to some of that. So I think there's the personal journey of riding those undulating waves, but there's also like what we're actually tapping into, which is really beautiful and powerful, and the planet really needs right now. And it's a language which is, you know, beyond, you know, country division or anything like that. Everyone kind of seems to understand it. You can hear a song and you feel moved. It doesn't matter what you know, what words you use to describe it. So I do think that when we use creativity, we are connecting or anchoring something in a way that's beyond like beyond words. I mean, it might be poetry or writing, but it's more of a metaphorical conceptualization of high frequency energy. So yeah.
You're speaking my language, Izzy. It's beautiful. Um, yeah, I think, you know, those creative portals are such a beautiful way to anchor that more expansive kind of energy. It's almost like, yeah, I'm not going to call it like new energy, but it just seems. Oh, I totally get where you're coming from because there just seems to be a lot, like a lot more profound kind of insights coming through too. You know, I love that so much. Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone seeking to align with their soul's calling and bring more intention into their creative expression?
Mm. Yeah, I think a big part of it is following the thing that is really exciting to you. You know, like there's that notion of like following your bliss or following your joy. But it's like, I think so often there's this notion of, I'll do it tomorrow, or, you know, like someone really wants to learn to sing or whatever. And it's like, there's always going to be so many priorities that are more important, and it can get put on the shelf. And then we're like, what is my soul calling? What is it? What is it? And it's like, well, what is it? What is that thing that you just really love to do? And it doesn't
Yes. What is
make
your
sense.
passion? What is your, you know, what do you lean into? Like, oh, yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So I think it's like allowing a little bit of a window of spaciousness in, I'm sure everybody's pretty busy with their lives, but if a little bit of time can be carved out to explore that excitement, and even the excitement in itself might be a stepping stone to something else. But I do really believe in this notion of following the whispers. And you know, that can look like different things for different people. But yeah, so I think that's one. Also, sometimes we have different quirks, you know, like what I was
Yeah.
saying about my synesthesia and how I found it frustrating. And then so I think that there might be things that are very unique to people, and they're like, why do I do that thing? Or like, why am I so sensitive when I'm around people? Or why do, like these curious
Oh,
things, So it's
exactly.
like, oh, maybe they're actually untapped. Gifts that are are connected to that soul purpose. And then I think the final thing, which I just think you probably resonate with as well, is just finding tools that work for you to raise your frequency. Like, of course, we do the work, and I'm not saying to spiritual bypass or anything like that,
Yeah.
but there's opportunities to, I guess this links in with that excitement and that joy, but like if there are, I mean, honestly, like personally, I can't recommend enough doing some form of energy work, like if it's just a
Oh,
Reiki course and
exactly. So profound.
yeah.
Um, I think when you work with energy and you have a clearer understanding that we are all connected, that there is, there is no, there, it's a sign, it's an illusion that we're separate, like, even spiritually and scientifically, we are all one. So I think once you have a better understanding of that, like it's just, I love the word you used earlier, it's expansive, right? It's
Yeah.
expansive.
And to
Mm.
have those tools yourself, it's one thing to have people that you like to go to that you feel a raise in that frequency, like different masters or teachers or spiritual teachers, and that's great too. But I think when you've just simply got a skill set of being like, well, I feel a little wonky right now, I'm going to just lie down for 20 minutes and put my hand on myself, and I can give myself a full energy reset. The decisions that you're going to be making from that place are going to be in your highest alignment rather than coming from a fear space or I don't know. Uh, yeah. So I'd say that. And then there was one other thing, and
That's such
that's,
a good tip. Connecting to that, that core, that calm, that really deeply intuitive space. It's just, yeah, to get really still and to listen to those whispers. So beautiful. What's your
Mhm.
third one?
well, the last one would be try everything. Well, not try everything.
Yeah,
Like
explore.
explore, like I actually didn't really think that I liked painting because the small amount of painting I had done was with acrylics, and I was using cheaper paints because I didn't really know what I was doing. And it's, if you don't, then you're just like, oh, I'll just try these. Um and then it was actually using oil paints that completely changed everything. I'm like, this is my medium. So, I think again that connects with like follow your excitement and or the whispers that will maybe lead you to having a bit of clarity about what those, at least narrowing down some of those things that you might want to try are.
Yeah,
But I think if you feel it really random cool to do something, like give it a
yeah.
go. You never
Yep,
know.
those quirky things are probably your juiciest gifts, your special gifts, like, yeah, I love that. And you know, tools are simply tools, like with your beautiful painting, um, like how magical is your painting, but you still need a paintbrush, right? So, I love that. That's so great. Thank
Hmm.
you so much, my love. It's been just so inspiring and so wonderful talking to you today. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything? Oh, do you have your deck there? Do you have a deck there?
I I do. I can quickly grab
Do you
them.
want to quickly grab it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask Izzy to pull a card for us today, which will be really exciting. Really looking forward to that. I just find Izzy's artwork and magical words, there's a synergy there. There's a beautiful mystical synergy that I think you're going to find really fascinating and interesting. And it's a really beautiful way to finish off our podcast today. I mean, Izzy's luminous energy and artistic wisdom just is really uplifting and very inspiring. So, yay! Here she is. Which deck
Okay.
have you
So,
got there?
well, I have all three. Whoops. Three of my decks.
I'm really
Easy
keen to do the golden one. Can we do the golden
Ah,
one?
we can definitely do that. I was actually curious to see if you'd be interested in the brand new cards that are
Oh,
currently
yes,
actually
please.
creating them as we speak. So I'm
Maybe we
not
could do a
yeah,
golden card and one of those as well. Let's do
sounds
two.
good to me. All right.
Yeah, let's do it. So
Okay.
exciting.
So let's see. Take the cards out.
Beautiful.
So what do
Yay.
we what should we
What should we
we
do?
ask?
What should we ask? You know, ask a question, receive an answer. I love having, that conscious kind of intention to begin with. So, what do we most need to know? I know we've got a full moon happening tomorrow, I think. It's a beautiful full moon. So, the end of a lunar cycle. But also, I love connecting into that solar energy as well. So, I don't know. What do we most need to know as a collective? I know it's
No,
a big question, but why not?
sounds like a question for these cards.
Exactly.
All right. Or for today, for now, collectively, for this moment in time. Hmm. All right. Well, the card I actually got was Autonomous Initiator, which is interesting. So,
Autonomy initiator. Yes. Can you show
yeah.
me the art? Can you show us the art?
So there's lots of different types of art in this deck, but some of them are these light frequency pieces, which are kind of more energetic and abstract. But that's
Beautiful.
very, very interesting. Um, yeah, so the energy connecting to the theme that we um had the intention for, when I look at that card, I think it's just that notion of when there's so many rules and so many uh okay
Restrictions almost, or
restrictions.
I mean,
Yeah, so I'm
they're,
seeing it energetically. Like
fabrications really, but yeah,
yeah, so I feel like we all know the this information within ourselves. Like it feels like hmm um we might
it's quite a
revisit
sovereign card, isn't it? Which is really interesting.
sovereignty. That's probably the
Yes,
best way of
because I've
describing
noticed
it.
that for me this week, sovereignty has been coming through really strongly, like to be self-governing, self-determining, focus on what really matters to you and what's coming through for you type thing. Autonomy is such a powerful gift. I mean, we're born with the gift of free will. We're born with the gift of free choice. And yeah, I love that card. I'd love your interpretation of that, of your beautiful card there.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the book here that I can just read a little bit if you
Yeah,
like.
that'd be nice.
Okay, so the it starts with you're fully charged, moving forwards in leaps and bounds as you bring your ideas into reality. And then the reading is the full power and passionate energy of this card indicates a sense of enthusiasm for bringing an idea into being. Having this fire inside you overweighs any fears you might have about the potential dangers or challenges ahead. If anything, the idea of the adventure is part of the thrill. This card reminds you that leaning into calculated risks has afforded you a lot of confidence, though the growth and expansiveness you've experienced through the growth and expansiveness you've experienced, there is a sense that you can take on the world. There is also an element of impulsiveness to consider. There may be a lot of forward momentum, but what are you moving towards? Sometimes it's wonderful to be doing something you love without concern for success. You are simply reveling in the adventure. There is nothing wrong with that, but check in with yourself to confirm your intention. And then it says the image on the card indicates an energetic force that is not grounded. It just is. It is very beautiful and colorful. Others may find this energy attractive and charismatic, but there may not be long-lived. Oh, I can't say it.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. In a reading, you can enjoy and harness this slipstream of inspired motion. Be careful of rushing from one
Oh,
to
that's good. That's
yeah,
good. Yeah.
without focusing on details or doing what is needed for success, for it to be sustainable. I'm gonna
Beautiful,
see if I
Izzy.
can like jump ahead, but yeah, so I think it's just that fire underneath us that is just surging us forward with that enthusiasm, and it definitely aligns with what we were just talking about in terms of following your bliss, or you're following that purpose or that mission that we're here for. So I think, that is how we'll be making shifts collectively. I think I kind of almost see it like if all of us connected to our soul purpose, or our soul mission, it's almost like we're all jigsaw puzzle pieces, and
Yes.
that's when we really will see these shifts. So I think that's probably
I
makes
love
sense.
that. Everybody has an important part to play. You know, everybody has a unique sound or a unique, beautiful soul mission. I love that so much. Can you hold up the deck for us, the cover of the deck, just to,
So this is the card, and these
yes, the
are
golden age. Yeah.
these nice.
Gorgeous. Love it. And now, how exciting. You're going to select a card for us that is your newest
A
deck.
new
Is that
deck.
right?
This hasn't been released yet. I'm actually still working on it. This is number 5. It's either going to be called Galactic Prayers or Galactic Earth. So we'll see what that ends up being. But
Both of
it's
them sound fabulous. Yes.
yeah, it's what's
I,
having me travel to different sacred sites around the planet, and
I love
uh,
star beings. I connect to the stars. Yeah, so
that makes
good.
sense.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions specifically?
How do we navigate? How do we hold the light? Like, how do we navigate what's going on in the planet at the moment? How do we not spiral, or how do we kind of stay true to our true north, I suppose, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Curious. I actually created a whole oracle deck for that question, and that's the Light Code Apothecary. It's for maintaining your
Oh,
light
is
no matter
it?
what. So that's
Oh,
just gonna,
interesting.
but I'll ask these guys. Let's see. Oh, I think this card wants to come out. Well, that's interesting. Um, It's funny because as these are in process, I am sort of changing some of the meanings slightly. You can
Yes.
see there's
Yeah.
2 dragons here. There's a white dragon and a black dragon.
I
But
love
when I created
dragons.
them, I was told that I needed to, or intuitively, it felt like they needed to be interconnected. So that whole notion of, this card currently is called Shadow and Light. Um, so I think when I just tune in energetically, I feel like, um, yeah, with that question, it's not like pushing down those shadows and hiding them. When you were asking a question earlier, there was one more thing that I was wondering about adding, and I think it's like sometimes we feel like there are things that we might not love about ourselves, or things that we're working on, and we want to just push them away.
Yeah.
Um, but the sad thing is, often our superpowers, or the things that we don't love about ourselves, are also like the flip side of them, are often they hold a lot of, like, yeah, our superpowers. So
Yeah.
I think I've had an experience in my life where I felt like maybe I was just over focused, for instance, and I would get too like caught up in bringing projects through a few years ago, and I decided like I didn't like that side of myself, so I kind of like threw it in the trash, and then I realized like, oh, actually that was there was a real strong benefit on the other side of that, which meant that I was able to like really bring impossible things into action. And I
Yes.
remember dusting it off and getting it out of the trash and being like, oh, it's like, it's just two sides of the coin, you know, like often the thing that we have the most, like just energy around is, you know, maybe the thing that we are most known for in a positive way. That's also just something that we can have awareness around, that it's just a bigger energy in general. So there's going to be both sides of the coin. So yeah, I think it's this kind of, I feel like in those moments when we're feeling wonky or not, you know, connected, I think it's like the answer there is to love those unloved parts of yourself,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
pushing them
Love
away
those
wherever
unloved parts of yourself.
possible.
Yes, exactly. It's really interesting, isn't it? You know, like the dance of the night and day, the winter, summer, you know, that sacred balance, that duality, not good or bad, you know, just, I totally agree. Like there's so much wisdom in our shadow and so much wisdom in that, in the dance of the light, the night and day. Yeah. I love the way you explained that. So beautiful. And loving those parts of ourselves, like, you know, I know we often talk about self-love, but, you know, self-compassion, you know, having compassion for our wobbly bits or our, you know, our, what we consider to be our darker side, which is usually our, as you said, you know, our magic a lot of the time. So I loved it. Thank you so much for coming on, Izzy. It's been an absolute joy. It's been so magical. I just found it really uplifting and inspiring, and I can't wait to see that deck be birthed out into the cosmos, and it's very, very exciting. Thank you, my love.
Thank you so much, Susie. It's been beautiful to share, and I loved your questions. So yeah, thank you for having me on here.
Thank you, my love.